I'm Aaron with Bowtie Treasures. It's so good to be here tonight. Tonight, kind of putting it on the intermediate level from the standpoint of we're going beyond just 2 coats of the same color and add a little bit of antiquing to a set, or at least one of a set of a nightstand. I wanted to do a quick introduction of what I'm going to be working on tonight, so hopefully it's something you're excited about as well, or maybe something you can try and add it to your repertoire. Let me pull up a couple pictures because I've done this technique before, and it's going to cover me up a little bit, but this is a piece I did a couple years ago, and tonight I'm going to show how to antique. Basically, we're going to use Dixie Belle's glaze to add a different kind of add some darkness or some color to the details of a piece. And the nightstands I have a lot of opportunity for that. But this is a piece that I did just a little while ago, and let me see if I can get there we go. But I mainly used the glaze, antique glaze, because the details on this piece I really wanted to pop out. So this is an example. Let me pull up another one. This is a dresser set that I did, and it had all these like inlays and details, so the glazing worked really well for that. Here's a couple more pictures. In both of these pieces, I used the color Drop Cloth, and I really like how Dixie Belle's Antique, the Van Dyke brown, works on Drop Cloth. So that's kind of what I'm going to do again tonight. I really like the look and excited to demonstrate that with you tonight. There are multiple colors of glaze. If you go to Dixie Belle's website, you're going to see that they have black, copper bronze, gold shimmer, grunge, high-ho silver, pearlescent, sapphire pearl, Van Dyke brown, and whitewash. Those are all listed as glazes, so there's a lot of variety of the glazes. Let me just tell you, there are multiple ways to achieve what I'm doing tonight. I've done it with voodoo gel stain. I've done it with watered down paint like coffee bean or chocolate. There's a lot of ways to achieve this, but tonight we're going to use the Dixie Belle glaze, the Van Dyke brown. I do want to let you know that the glaze has a little bit of a top coat feel to it. So usually when I put more than a feel, it has a little bit of top coat in it. So it does have a little bit of a protective element to it. So if you get it on your hands, it'll feel a little different than, let's say, a voodoo gel stain or even for sure chalk paint. So I like to use gloves just because you're going to wipe a lot of this glaze off, and it just gets a little slimy after a while, again because of glaze. So I'm not using gloves because there's something wrong or harmful at all. It's totally cool. I'm just kind of, when I'm done, I can just take the gloves off and my hands are clean. So I've got just some regular gloves that I would you can use for maybe cleaning. Like, check this out. This is the sapphire pearl. How cool. Let's see if it'll grab it there, but it's so it wants to grab. There we go. It's just such a beautiful color. I don't get to use it much. I don't have a lot of pieces that works on, but if you like the glam and you like shine, try some of the copper, gold, silver, sapphire, pearlescent. Those are all really great if you like a little bit of bling in your piece. The ones that I've used a lot are black and grunge. Those work really well if you're using especially the dirt. And I have used whitewash quite a bit. And whitewash is also a glaze. You can see it's even on the label. So it's going to have that same feel. If you like whitewashing things, this is a great product. So again, this piece, the 2 nightstands I'm working on, I already put 2 coats of Drop Cloth chalk mineral paint on there. And let me just tell you that it's important to also let your chalk paint dry pretty well. Like, I painted my 2nd coat yesterday. The reason being, when you come, the way I'm going to do my technique tonight, if you go in there and you add glaze and you wipe, you're basically going to be wet distressing if that chalk paint hasn't dried really well. You might want that wet distressing and glazing, that's fine, but I'm just telling you, be careful. You don't want to just finish painting this and jump right in there with glazing, because you will wipe that paint off. But just so you know, that's what I've done. All right, Amber, good to see you there. So again, glad you guys are here. So another thing I'm probably going to use is Dixie Belle's La Petite brush. But really anything that you want to use. For example, you might try the French tip. These are natural, just something that has kind of a tapered edge if you want to do some softening of any of the techniques, so we'll keep that handy. Let me show you one of the drawers I did. So this drawer I did earlier, and it already has, let me bring you guys in a little closer. So it already has the antiquing. You can even see a little bit how it has a little bit of a vignette happening. And I'm going to show you, this is what I'm going to show you how to do it. There's a little bit more in here. So we just want to give this a little bit of kind of an antique is what I'm going to say, I'm going to call it. But I went ahead and did one just so I can demonstrate how this piece is going to work. And there's a couple key steps that we're going to repeat a lot. So once you get these down, you should have a good basis for how to do this. First thing, of course, is have your Van Dyke. As I mentioned before, you could use, I like Tobacco Road Voodoo Gel Stain. All right, I've got Dixie Belle's Mister Bottle, and the way I do this is I work wet because I want to wipe it off unless you want it to sit longer, but keep in mind as it starts to dry, you're not going to be able to wipe it off. So it is important to keep it wet. So I like the size of the drawer. I'm just going to give it a mist. So that water really is just sitting on the paint. It's not reactivating the paint. So because it's dry, I don't have to worry about it. I've got a 1-inch flat small, and all I'm going to do is dip into the glaze and just get it on there. I do recommend at this point is just to work quickly. If you hit any part of it that's dry, give it a quick mist because you want to work wet. I demonstrate what I call shading oftentimes, and I always stress that in order to do the shading with chalk paint, for example, you must keep it wet where that chalk paint will start drying on you. So if I'm working quickly, it's because I'm fighting against the clock, that I don't want any of this glaze to start setting. And if you need to, give it another mist so that glaze, and you put on as much glaze as you want. I'm not going to put much in the middle. I like to kind of let it vignette towards the middle. And now you can go ahead and just wipe it off. This is the reason why here, while I'm wearing the gloves, is because I don't want all this glaze. Once I get the glaze on my hands and the glaze is on my brush, and it just gets everywhere. So it's pretty easy. Again, you wipe off as much as you want, or leave as much as you want, however you want to describe that. And I'm just going around looking for a lot of the excess glaze. Now, here's where you might use your brush. In fact, let's bring out the French tip. I mentioned that a while ago. You might not want puddles of glaze in there. So this will allow me to kind of get it out of the corners, and you can re-wipe. But again, there's a level of workability here that after a little bit, it's going to start setting. So I'm just fading. I know based on my previous drawer that this is too much glaze, so I'm going to wipe off a little bit more in the middle. I like to have kind of a blended vignette. What's more antiquing than a vignette, right? Like a old sepia tone photo. So if I move it around in the light, you'll see there's a good view of it, where how it's heavier here and lighter in the middle. So you just wipe off. My rag is damp, not dripping wet. But once you're done and you let it set, give it a little bit of time. You know, maybe tomorrow I can come back and do any top coating. There are other ways of achieving this, of course. I got a little hair right there. It would be easier for me just to leave that hair there than to start rubbing it off, okay? Now keep in mind, every drawer may not be exactly perfect, but if you are trying to make them perfect, you might want to keep them nearby so you know exactly how much you rubbed off, that kind of thing. So maybe I'll leave that right there and we'll use that for reference. Hopefully that was helpful. I do not top coat first. And the reason why you don't have to top coat first, at least for me, is that I work quickly and I keep the surface wet. So I want to stress that. So here we go. Because it's not top coated right now, I'm going to just give it a nice mist. You have to use a squirt bottle, but that's it. And by the way, as a side note, before I began, I did do a light sanding just to get it nice and smooth. That's just to get it really buttery smooth. So I'm dipping into my Van Dyke brown just a little bit, not too much. You control how much you want to put on there. And you can see I'm being pretty liberal with it, but not crazy. Just enough so that I can give it a little bit of a stain, get the stuff in the cracks, and then we're going to start wiping it off. If you do not spray it first, that's the kind of situation where I'd say you probably do want to top coat first. If you're concerned that you're not going to be able to wipe it off fast enough or effectively, then yes, I go back to the you might want to top coat. But I've done this enough that I kind of know how much area I can get done before it starts setting on me. Okay, so again, we're focusing on removing more in the middle, maybe on the top of the drawer. But you're not trying to remove the glaze from any of the corners, because that's kind of the cool part. So I'm going to bring out the French tip again, look for anything I don't want. You may not always do this step, but if you see areas you want to spread out or soften, because sometimes depending on your rag, you might not want the texture of the rag on your piece. So I've just used that brush almost just to move the glaze around. Okay, so let's move it around to the light a little bit. Because it's wet, the lights in my studio kind of give it a little bit of a shine. So, oh, you see right there, a little extra glaze on the top. This is the part that they're going to see, so you want to take a little extra care in making sure that looks nice. But see, I didn't top coat before. I think we did pretty good, right? So there's two drawers that are looking pretty good. I'm going to put those off to the side. So this is the nightstand. I've got two of them. And you can see how the side panel has a lot of decorative elements to it. And that's really what I want to accentuate tonight. And bring out all these details, even the details possibly of the feet. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So let's focus on one side at a time. So let's continue our principle here of keeping it wet, moving quickly. What we want to see is how flat this is compared to when we start accentuating it with Van Dyke glaze. So this is drop cloth, 2 coats. So work in sections, just get it on there. I'm using the 1-inch flat small, and try and keep it set up so that you're not going so far. It's going to be a little tricky, just to make sure that we're not moving too far along. But I think right there is enough. We've got a rag. You can see it's got a little bit of Van Dyke on there. We'll just wipe it off. I'm not removing all of it, so some of it is leaving a tint on the drop cloth, and I'm perfectly fine with that. You can use Van Dyke on all kinds of colors, but these two seem to be a match made in heaven, if you will. And right now I'm just removing any extra glaze that I can't control, or maybe that's not the right word, but just so that I'm ready for the next section, okay? So we're just gonna keep, now here, if I spray right now, you might wanna be a little careful on, let's work on this middle panel, okay? That's gonna be our focus right now. I still have my French tip if I need to do any spreading. I want color in the middles, in all the cracks. I'm not gonna put any of this glaze on the flat surfaces. I think by the time I start rubbing this around, there'll be plenty of it to go around. Okay, so remember I've sprayed this with water and get in the corners. If you're not getting in the corners, you're kind of missing the point, at least in my project, in my opinion, I guess. So here we go. Now we're just gonna wipe it off. That quick, that easy. Because I'm doing this right here, I am spreading that Van Dyke glaze around on the flat surfaces. That's why I didn't put any on there. If you need to, take your mister bottle out and re-wet any areas that you feel like you need to rework or it's not moving quickly enough. I'm gonna move my rag around. Maybe get in these cracks. This is where I think the French tip's gonna help me. I'd like to spread out the glaze in the cracks a little bit, and I'm gonna wipe it off with my brush just to even it out. And I'm gonna go along the edges, just soften that brush stroke. It's still movable, still pliable. I'll wipe off any of the flat edges I don't like. Watch out for corners where maybe you got a little too much of the brush. Just, you know, you're just managing it. I like it to be a little lighter in the middle, so I might rub more in the middle. But my rag's getting a little bit extra. I'm gonna switch to a different rag. And you can always still mist at this point, but you hear me say a lot of times when I was demonstrating how to blend the other day here, and I mentioned don't sweat over it. Remember, this is not meant to be seen up close, although let's bring it up close. People aren't going to be staring at the side of this. So there's a little bit of streak in there from the rags, but again, I have to bring you in really close for you to really see that. But to me, that's a much better feel, appropriate feel for this piece than, say, if I bring on around to the other side, if you can remember, it's flat and plain, right? So I'm not saying this side's wrong, I'm just saying if you want to go to the next level and add a little bit of custom work to it, this is more custom, okay? I'm going to just lower the camera down a little bit, bring you guys in as close as I can, and let's work on this lower section. Mr. Bottle. Once you get going, you'll get a hang of how much water. It should just feel slick. Remember, there's a bit of glaze in here, so it's going to slide and glide nice. If it grabs, there's probably not enough water or something. Wrong product, right? So here we go, just rubbing it off, wiping off. I can still come back with a brush and fade it, or shade it, or soften it. Look how easy that is. Isn't that beautiful? So here I'm just kind of wiping off some excess. And what a difference that makes from plain to custom. Got a little bit extra down here, just need to kind of be careful. The bottom of my rag oftentimes will get some excess on there, so but I'm working so quickly, sometimes I'll not look around. So that's coming along quite well. Okay, so let's see how this, the feet are a little tricky because you got to work all the way around. The nice thing is I'm using my little Lazy Susan. Sometimes I get asked about that. You can see that on my Bowtie Treasures website under Amazon shop, and there's a little bit of information how I made mine. You know, a lot of people ask me about that. Somebody asked me about it this morning on YouTube because I was, so right there, I might just go that far. I don't know that I need to go all over because once you start wiping this around, you're kind of rubbing that on other parts, and I don't really need all of the feet to be Van Dyke brown. I just want the crack to be accentuated, so I'm just wiping it around. And if you feel like when you're done, you didn't do enough, let it dry and come back and do another coat. I mean, if you wanted to, you could probably even mix the glazes, like a little bit of whitewash in your Van Dyke if it's too dark for you. There's so many options. All right. But I didn't go all the way around with the water, but that's okay. I'm working fast enough that that shouldn't be a problem. But I can guarantee you right now, I'm probably gonna miss something. So I'll just come back later and fix it up. Glad many of you are liking the look, that's good. So I'm just kind of working my hand in there. This is another reason why I do not like working on the floor. It'd be really hard to do this on the floor. But if you can get something to get your nightstands or small projects off the ground, I think your legs will thank you later. Or your knees, you know. All right, so here's where you might want to use the brush just to get some of the excess spread out and smooth. And that's helping me get into those tight spaces that maybe the rag can't. And then I'm going to wipe off the excess. So it gives you, Dixie Belle's paint, when dry, is very strong and can handle all this wiping and extra water spray and all that. So that's why I don't wax. I don't wax anyway, but I don't top coat first. But I will say, if you have a very large area, you can't keep it wet long enough, I will say glazing may be a good idea for you. Okay, so let's work on the front. Remember, I'll probably do the top. It looks like I need to put another coat of paint on that. I must have missed that, but let's work on the front. Let's see if I can bring in as far as I can. You guys can really see the technique up close. So here, if we use the same principle as the top, let's focus on putting details. Well, I think I need to go all the way across, but I'm trying to keep it not on all the areas. If you need to use a smaller brush, go for it. You know, whatever you got to do to get the job done. So that's about all I want to do right there. I'm gonna set that to the side. I'm gonna give a slight mist just to keep it wet while I work across. You can already tell that this rag is not as wet as the last one, so that's where, for me, having a bucket of water, I might add a little bit of water to it. So my finger can't quite get in all those cracks, so you could either leave it because you think, well, that looks authentic, or you might say, well, this is where a small brush, even if I was using like a 1-inch or something, where I can use it to kind of get some of this excess glaze out. And it's giving me a little bit of a feathered look, which is really subtle and nice, and I can still wipe off. So I'm wiping heavier in the middle. That's where I want the eye to draw on, and just light on the edges. So just use a light touch, not trying to rip the paint off or anything. Wiping off over. That's looking pretty good. What do y'all think? I'm currently using Drop Cloth with Van Dyke Brown. To me, it's such a great combination. Oh, looks like I missed a spot right there. So let's go back. I got a little glaze in my brush. So just kind of inspect your work a little bit, get in the grooves where you need to be. Okay. So you can see, hopefully, how well that's going from a darker to a slightly lighter look without compromising me keeping glaze in the cracks. Just wiping off a little excess. Okay. So let's take a quick look at how well that's developing into the front. So let's work right up here. Okay, we'll continue that look. Hopefully my camera's keeping up with me. It wants to autofocus on a lot of things, so hopefully it's giving you guys a good look. So you notice I only did around the groove, not up here, and I didn't go up the side. We'll just go ahead and wipe that off. You're simulating basically the concept that whoever cleaned this couldn't quite get all of it clean, so it just over time kind of started building up. Or however you want to describe it, whatever makes you happy. So if you need to spray your rag before you rub, that's fine. I got a little bit extra I don't want up there. So I don't think I need to do too much glazing up the side, but I can. It just depends on how much you want to do. Okay, so that's coming along really well. Now because the glaze has a little bit of top coat, it has that workability, so I'll just give it another spray because there's a couple areas I wanted to work on. Your rag dries out on you, put a little bit of spray on it. All right, this side's about done. The top is something that is a little trickier, but totally can doable. But probably what I would do is work with a larger brush. So I tell you what, let's do. We got the time, and I hate to shortchange you guys by not doing the top, but it is a little harder for me to do the top when it's up there. So if you guys are gonna hang around, let me drop this and let's see if we can knock the top out. Okay, so this is where we gotta work a little faster. So I might switch to a slightly larger brush, like a flat medium instead of the... Remember what I did a while ago is I would come over here with this sanding sponge and just give it a nice light coat so it's beautifully smooth. I like to give my brush a little bit of a mist, not a lot, just so it's not just soaking up my glaze right away. Now, this is a larger surface, so you gotta work a little quicker. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get my bucket. I wasn't planning on doing the top, but I think it makes perfectly sense. We've got the time. So I just got my rag more wet because it's a larger area and I need it to work quickly. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna give it, this is again where the continuous spray is gonna help. I definitely wanna get the front. I want the whole top to be wet because I don't want to hit any dry spots. I don't need it dripping or anything, but workable. The reason why I chose the flat medium is because it'll still comfortably fit in my container. If you don't have a good brush like this, this is a great size to work with because it'll fit in most of your 8-ounce containers. The mini kind of or mostly fits, but you could start bending your bristle, not bending them, but your brush gets a little messed up, and a flat medium fits really well. So definitely use that link and check out the flat medium if you don't have one. So here we go. This is where, to me, I don't really need to do much more on the sides. So I'm just gonna do the ends. That's where I want the detail anyway. And what I'll do is I'll see if I can't vignette some of that onto the middle. I don't do a lot of extra work on the tops. To me, I kind of like the tops a little bit more neutral. You could even take something like your besting brush. I'm gonna try, there's so many ways of doing this, but I'm gonna take a mini and let me wet this down again. You can take a mini and fade this out. I'm just kind of blending right now. Got to keep it wet. There's a larger surface, but I'm looking to make that edge disappear. Right now I think it's showing up because it's wet, but I am looking for more of a disappearing look. I'm kind of I'm not making this up. I don't do this a lot, so I'm just seeing which technique would work best. But right now I just wiped off a lot of the glaze, so I gotta be careful not to overly work this. Okay. Trust me, we don't always have all this figured out. We've got to figure it out just like you guys do. But all right, so what I'm gonna do this time is I'm gonna use my brush or my rag and just go side to side. You know how we talked about top coating first? This might be where I would do it, but I'm keeping it wet. Right now, the side to side is working fine. If this was the top of a dresser, for example, a 6-foot dresser would be a lot harder. That's where I might top coat first. But in smaller spaces, it's not as critical. I'm gonna use the tip of my finger and just kind of wipe. Don't wanna wipe out the glaze in the cracks. Now, because I went side to side all the way across, I'm getting a nice, if you do get streaks, it's nice and straight and level, and it looks pretty nice. Very pleased with that. Looks like I got underneath a little bit. Sorry if I'm in the way. Just inspecting my work right now, make sure I don't have any goobered up areas. Should be all set here. All right. She is glazed. I've got one more nightstand to do. I'll not do it on the live tonight, but you have seen the steps, and hopefully they're helpful to you for projects you're working on. I'm just wiping off things that I couldn't see down below. And but I think it's going to look fantastic. When I get the set done, I'll post them. I'm not doing, okay, one thing I could do is I can come right here, maybe add a little bit in this area. I could go up the sides. So I might do little things like that if I feel like it's just too plain, like maybe do the inside, stuff like that. I oftentimes will figure that out once I kind of step away and let it chill for a while. I still need to do in here. I forgot that part. So let me do that real fast. It's always nice to kind of finish a piece totally, then have to keep coming back. So let me do that while you guys are here. I think we're running out of time. No, we're doing okay. Got about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, something I may have not answered or you didn't get to ask yet, please put that in the comments, and I'll do my best to go back in the next day and just read through those. If Dixie Belle or someone didn't quite answer it, I'll be happy to do that. Just give me a little bit of time. Feel free to message me on my Facebook page if you have any specific questions that you think that would be better. Like I'm fine if you want to send me pictures and say, hey, what would you do here? Or how would you handle this? That kind of thing's perfectly fine. I'm getting underneath this, so it's kind of disappearing a little bit. I didn't do this part yet. So on the edges, I might keep a little extra on the edges and then wipe more off as we've been doing. Sometimes after a while you get extra glaze in your rag, and it kind of plays to your advantage because you're almost tinting the paint with the rag, but you got to just fill that out. Keep an eye on it, because you know, if you start getting I've got a little edge here where my glaze has got into my paint. Well, as I keep going down, I'm just adding more and more stained glaze because it's in my brush or my rag. I'll then cover the whole area with the stained wet rag. That's okay. Whatever works. I just don't want it to be white, and I don't want it to be pure drop cloth either, so that's why we do that. Okay, well, I'm sure I will keep running into areas that I wish I did differently, but I'm not going to sweat it because I can always touch it up I can repaint a leg and restain it later. It's all good. But by the time we're done, people are going to be viewing it from this far away, and it won't really matter. All right, well, I hope that helps you. If you haven't tried glazing, or what I sometimes I'll call shading, it's really a fun technique. It adds some really lovely character to your piece. Check out Dixie Belle's full line of glaze. If you want to go a little further and make it grungy, check out the dirt. The glaze and dirt work really well together. And I'm excited to see this thing come together. It's crazy because, I don't know if you think about it, but 2 nightstands, in my opinion, oftentimes is more work than 1 dresser. I don't know how it works out. And unfortunately, yeah, it's just more work, more drawers, or more feet. There's 8 feet instead of 2 or 4. But anyways, it can be very rewarding, and I'm excited to see this one coming together as I was hoping it would. Creators, have a great weekend. Do something creative. Thanks for watching tonight. Be sure to check me out on YouTube and social media. So excited to be part of the community. Looking forward to doing some more work with you all. Have a great night. Take care. See you later.
That's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye!